the roundtable on safe and sustainable by design that will be moderated by Ignasi Gispert P from Applied Nanoparticles in Spain. Ignasi is a partner in SABYDOMA, and the floor is yours, Ignasi.
Thank you, Beatriz, very much, and good morning to everyone. Just in order to make the most with the time we have left and taking into account the number of panelists we have, decided to go for a one-to-one question and answer model. So just let me give you the context of our questions and ask our experts for comments. Next, question one, please, Beatriz. So let me just start explaining you question number one. Basically, we all agree, and today's workshop is proof that safety and sustainability by design is a concept in the making. It can be understood as a complementary guidance for developers, as a potential new overarching principle in chemical governance and regulation, or as a legal concept in line with the presentation given by Anthony this morning. As per today, all possibilities are open, and most probably the Commission workshop to be held next month will start clarifying a little bit the path that we are going to follow. But what it seems clear is that risk regulation is an ex post concept, while safety and sustainability by design is ex ante. That the implementation of safety and sustainability by design to be successful will require soft and hard law mechanisms. And that the focus will need to be in promoting safety and sustainability by design innovations more than in avoiding risk. So having in mind all those considerations, possibilities and approach, the question would be, next slide please, Beatriz, where do you think SSbD concept will be in 5 years' time, and where you would like them to be? So both, for us, both perspectives are important. What do you think is feasible and what you would like to see? We have asked 5 of our panelists to reply to this question, and we perhaps start in order with Jana, please, if you could start this roundtable.
Okay, thank you very much. For me, SSbD means, first of all, collaboration among various stakeholders. It is very broad, very interdisciplinary, and as we already heard several times, there are lots of missing data, there is knowledge gap, and we need to learn. So it will be a process, it will be the development, and we will need some strong case studies, and we need to stay flexible. Definitely, we will maybe discover that this is working, this is not working, and we need to learn. This is what I think we will achieve in 5 years. We will have some already well developed case studies of chemicals and materials, and from this we can move further.
Okay, thank you very much, Jana. Let's go now to Sean, please.
Thank you. So where would I like to be with safe and sustainable in 5 years? I'd like us to be moving away slightly from it being a philosophy to there being more practical guidance. As I was trying to show in my presentation, I think the challenges we have at the minute is that we're asking people at an early stage, if we consider nanomaterials is far to the left of a supply chain. There are people who are making the raw materials that go into an intermediary, that go into a product that eventually become something that the consumer uses. And we're asking them to take a viewpoint of what will happen at the end of life of something at the end of a supply chain. And that's something that at the minute, I don't think is possible to do in practical terms. I know certainly we've been working in several of these projects, and this is something that we've seen, is that we're asking people to do something that the tools just don't exist for them. So it'd be nice to see if we can get more of those tools in place, if we can move safe and sustainability by design to actually look at it at the design phase. And that's something that's really challenging. I don't think it's something that's possible to do today. And certainly if you talk to the people, for example, who are looking at life cycle assessment, that's something that's very difficult to achieve, to get all of that data to be able to do life cycle assessment. And it's going to be similar with the safety and sustainability of product design, and of, more importantly, of material design. And I think as you move further to the right of a supply chain, where you get further up into the supply chain, the safe and sustainability by design becomes easier, because you have more data, you have more knowledge, you have more of a bigger viewpoint of where you've been and where you're going. And also then you have better options. You can pick those options, you can make those choices better. But I shall leave that there now, because I'm sure there's other people who will have other things to say.
Oh, thank you very much, John. I cannot stop by saying that being a company producing nanoparticles from the lab, your comments are very, very accurate. And it's clear that you are in a association of industrial people working on nanos and knows the real thing on of the day-to-day problems that we are facing. Thank you very much. Now we move to Blanca, please.
Hi, yes. Following on Sean, from a consultant's perspective, in 5 years' time, I would like to move fast, because we are creating a lot of interest out there. And somehow we are still looking into the concept and not into the implementation, because we are a little bit far still. But I will say that we have been, all of us have been working in these projects for many years. We have identified a lot of gaps. So I think in knowledge, I think it will be nice to revisit those gaps and move forwards. Because sometimes I'm under the impression that we are going back to square one again, and we do have a lot of information. We have an excellent framework produced by the ARC in NanoReg, in the first NanoReg project. We had case studies in many projects. So I think it's really worth the time to have a look at what we've done and move forward, because that may help us to move faster. And yeah, again, I think it's also nice to have the perspective of the small companies, the SMEs, which are, in my opinion, sometimes underrepresented in all these projects. And yes, that will be my view. Yeah. I think I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Blanca. I also have the feeling that from the first NanoReg project, there are a lot of things that are being repeated, and it seems that we are not advancing on that. Thank you. Let's go now to Anne-Chloe, please.
Yes, I just would like to follow on what just Blanca said. I think we have a lot to learn on what has been done on nanomaterials. So we just have to go wider than the nanomaterials community, but we have to take examples on what all has been done already with the nanomaterials. And I think this IRIS project and also the PARC partnership will definitely build on everything which has been done with nanomaterials. So I wouldn't call it square zero. In 5 years' time, I'm hoping that we have a community in place involving the SMEs. Again, Blanca, I fully agree. It's probably the SMEs who are most important to reach out, because like the big companies have started to work on safe and sustainable by design, but the SME is not. And we are talking here about value chains, and all the companies downstream in the value chains are mostly SMEs. And that's exactly what we need to do, is really connect big industry with SMEs. And not only, of course, this, but also the education part. For me, I'm hoping that in 5 years' time, that we have a proper education on safe and sustainable by design, product safety, chemical safety, sustainable chemistry in universities. I mean, it has started. We have some masters and things, in place in Europe, but it's surely not enough. So that's what we have to work on. And I'm hoping that in 5 years' time, we have some sort of framework on the education side. Also that SMEs have already started to embed this concept of SSbD, and for the big companies that they have already implemented the SSbD, an SSbD framework. This is it.
Thank you very much. And in fact, just to say, from a perspective of a small company producing nanos, we really need this approach, and we really need help to be able to not lose the opportunities given by this framework, and especially I would say that the idea of we are the ones developing the second and third generation of nanos, and we need to enter safety and sustainability by design in our labs now, and that is something that it's very difficult from being alone as a small company. Anyhow, thank you very much. Let's go now to Henrik, please.
Thank you. Yes, it's a very interesting question, and luckily, we might say there is a political timeline that hopefully that will be kept, and we will have a kind of definition at the end of this year, at least for chemicals, and that's probably usable. Of course, I hope in 5 years' time we will have a system in place such as the one I presented earlier, a system that creates incentives for industry to move in a direction towards more sustainability and phasing out substances of concern. And it is true that we lack a lot of data. Hopefully in 5 years' time, we will have more data that we can use in this way. But I hope also that we are not, we do not suffer from paralysis by analysis. That we can actually move ahead and create something useful that can be widely recognized and help industry, and especially companies that are trying to push ahead to get a good foothold on the market. And I think it's as I said previously in my presentation, I think it would be a very good idea to start off using the information that we actually have, to have a very clear timetable to how to improve and develop this criteria over time, so that we just get started and not get stuck in paralysis by analysis.
Oh, thank you very much, Henrik. I absolutely agree with the idea of not of starting to move. I think it's similar to what Blanca also said. The idea of from NanoReg 2, we have learned a lot, and we can move. The only comment I would say to your reply is about the idea of incentives. I totally agree that we need incentives, but I think that incentives alone is for the big industry. I'm not sure that the small companies and the small SMEs working on nano can apply for those kinds of incentives. But anyway, this is another discussion. Let's turn now to our second question. Please, Beatriz. And I just a little bit of context here. It has been said that the full deployment of safety and sustainability by design concept implies developing a value-based approach as opposed to a science-based only approach. And this is directly connected with the essential use concept also included in the chemical strategy for sustainability. They say that the objective is then not just to avoid bad or avoid risk, but actively look for sustainability objectives. In other words, safety and sustainability by design is pointing towards a scientific informed but value-based approach to nanomaterial governance. So if this is the case, then the question would be, next slide, please. Do you consider that safety and sustainability by design might become a lever for initiating a systemic change in nanomaterials governance and regulation? What do you? Hello, Mario.
Hi, thank you very much for bearing with me. Yes, this is super complex question, and I know I've been doing some work on nanotechnology in the past from the perspective of responsible innovation, but of course I'm not like a super expert on the topic, so please consider the limitation of my knowledge. A quick question, a quick reply to this question. The way at the moment is framed, at least by European Union, I don't think is not leading to, or at least is not, has no potential to lead to a systemic change in nanoparticle governance and regulation, because of the points that I raised in my speech. Because it's too much focus on this idea of unreflective economic growth and unreflective innovation governance. So I don't see really like any kind of potential to reverse this obsession that we have with the, increasing industrial productivity, discourse about efficiency, discourse about markets. So a quick question, a quick reply would be no. But as a way of adding something to the debate, I think there is definitely something that we can do in terms of funding. I think that's the way we found projects in nanotechnology or at the European level is very much focused on markets, industry, and also there is no real possibility for society to get into to engage with scientists and experts about, do we really need nanotechnology? What kind of nanotechnology do we need? How we govern this, and what's happening if something go wrong? So first, funding. Second, planning. We'll be talking a lot of markets and how industry and companies are very good at of making this transition, but planning seems to be like a taboo concept at the European level. Even though we are doing a lot of planning, the European Union is doing a lot of planning in terms of, okay, we regulate, we put a restriction on certain compounds and materials and molecules and technology and so on. But having like the centrality of planning into a political and a political economy debate in the European Union in terms of how we regulate and how we govern technology is super important. And then my last point that is connected to my first point is that we also have this obsession with this dichotomy, market and the state. So the state put the money for the research and the markets, and then all the research that we do is supposed to be sold in the markets, so that all the research on nanotechnology is supposed to be from the lab for a market, for, of course, economic growth. I mean, this is super limited kind of very narrow perspective, because there is a third way of producing and delivering goods for society, which is the commons. There are people studying commons modes of production, commons-based peer production that don't fit into the market or the state models, but it's a third way that somehow overcomes or has the potential to overcome this dichotomy between markets and the state. I'm talking about cooperatives, I'm talking about non-for-profit companies that are producing value, of course, but not for the sake of capital accumulation. I'm talking about open source community, also in biology, also in other, apart from software, there are open source and open hardware community that I think have a great potential to do this systemic change that you're talking about. Okay, so thank you very much. I need to leave you because I have another commitment. It's been a pleasure to be with you this morning, and good luck for the projects.
Thank you very much, Mario. I can only say that this broader perspective, this zoom out that you are giving us, I think it's extremely necessary in our nano small nano community discussions. And I think this open up a lot of issues to be discussed. Thank you very much, Mario.
Bye-bye.
And now, Victor, please.
Hello. Oh, Mario. Now it's gone. I would say exactly the same. You are talking about systemic change. I think safety by design would be, it's got the characteristics needed to promote or to on the right direction of systemic change, but I think it's not, doesn't depend on that. I think the systemic change, I think the problem is economic. I think it's economic. I think it's not so technological as economical. And I was thinking in the previous question, I don't know if 5 years from now, safety by design would lay by besides corporate social responsibility, and we will keep us busy discussing about how bad we do things while we keep doing business as always. I mean, that's the problem is serious about sustainability. If we don't use plastic, we will use wood, and we will deforest the planet in 10 years. If we make fusion from hydrogen to get energy, then we will increase the oxygen concentration in the planet because we will use too much. I mean, it's the tragedy of commons, very well described by Paul Ehrlich in the 61, I think, science paper. And that's the problem society has to face about sustainability and safety. Our drive to preserve genetic preservation or whatever, phenotype and genotype that make us aggressive and to use the environment and people as abusively. I don't know. Sure, safety sustainability by design should put other priorities on the socio-technological development. For sure, it's in the right direction, but the ability to change things, as far as we don't things to be changed, I don't know. But I think it's not a problem of nanotechnology, not even of safety by design in nanotechnology or chemicals. We can do a lot of harm with clean chemicals, believe me.
Thank you very much, Victor. I totally agree with the idea that safety and sustainability by design might be a tool if for a systemic change if we know and we are really willing to use that in that direction and not just for a kind of greenwashing for doing a kind of keeping on with the same business without changing a lot of things. Thank you very much, Victor. And for closing our roundtable, Denis, please.
So yeah, I mean, actually, I think that SSbD can and should become a lever for having a system change. This is obviously a step, a quantum change in thinking. I have to say here that this is not something that started with the nano world, because as you saw better in the document I sent you, the question of trying to design for sustainability and also indeed for safety is a thing that is going on since the last 20-25 years in different aspects, but it has never gone into the regulatory domain. And indeed, the nano world was the first one that actually brought it into, let's say, a concise and comprehensive perspective. And I think that's key. So from that perspective, being able to demonstrate, given the, let's say, ubiquitous nature of nano technology and nanoparticles in today's world, I actually think that SSbD is a game changer, both with regard to the governance and with regard to regulatory aspects, both with regard in terms of concept, design, implementation, and monitoring. But indeed, these are different perspectives of the same problem, and we need to be able to create tools that that are adjusted to the needs of the different players in this, from these different perspectives, which of course can also be transparent and talk to each other, because we need to maintain this trust of the citizen to the whole system. So I do think that SSbD offers an opportunity here for system change. both in terms of how we implement innovation in nanoparticle, in the nano world in general, but also in terms of what Mario mentioned earlier, in terms of the need to decouple with growth, the growth requirement, because it is an issue of sustainability. And here, the question of sustainability has to pose also some reflections on some further reflections on how we achieve that in the long term and on an intergenerational perspective. As I said in my intervention, time is of the essence. In time, in terms of the time dimension, is essential in assessing SSbD.
Okay, thank you very much, Denis, because I think that you are very optimistic on what safety and sustainability by design can really bring to this as a systemic change. I think it's very interesting to see a person so convinced that really that could make a change. Let's say that I always have a little bit of remembering what happened with responsible research and innovation, and all the movement that was created and how it was fading out. So I really hope that safety and sustainability by design would be a game changer and be able to really change things, not like it happened with responsible research and innovation. Just for asking you a little bit more, what do you think is the difference between one movement and the other one? So why you are so positive about safety and sustainability by design, or what do you think is different from the approach of the people who approach responsible innovation that was not was more academic, not scientific, and safety by design is more scientific led, or what is your opinion on that?
That's a very good question. I think the question in all this kind of potential game changers and how they would actually be able to bring into reality their promise is the question of time. So it is a question of maturity, and maturity has to do with socioeconomic conditions. It has to do with comprehension of the nature of how things happen, both with regard to in the economic and industrial and technological world, and in the natural world. And also, allow me to say again, I was really impressed by Mario's intervention earlier. Also in the ethical world, and because how our collective ethics actually evolves, modulates how we approach reality, and so from that as a society. And from that perspective, I think right now we are at the stage where this game-changing capacity is there. It was not probably some years ago when the responsible innovation movement was coming across. I personally have spent many years both in the US, in the European Commission. I was with the JRC for 18 years before coming to academia in Greece and in Italy. So actually, I have seen different aspects, different perspectives of the same, let's say, thinking, and that's why I believe, I can very distinctly discern that there are specific elements that actually converge right now from all these different facets of the world, the scientific and technological, but also the regulatory and the political, and again, more importantly than anything else, the societal and ethical. I think this is key, because in the end of the day, we are here as scientists and engineers, and also as let's say even as regulators. We are here to serve society. I mean, we're here to answer to societal needs, and right now, and so how society perceives its needs and how it sort of thinks that it is the most appropriate way to address them is the key driver for change. I think we're right now getting to that stage. I very much, for instance, it was a very important dimension, the one that Sean mentioned earlier, about the connection with both the academic needs, so training that is missing, the fact that he actually did not just focus only on the design of the chemicals and the materials, but also of the processes that actually manufacture and systems and products. And I would like to add here, so the engineers who are process engineers in addition to chemists and material scientists, but also to look at the fact that we need to take into account how all these things are going to be consumed, and what are the secular dimensions, what's the secular dimension in these, because that really touches upon a much wider system perspective than just the industry, industrial plant fence, if you like. So I really think this is calling for a system change, and this is why I'm saying that you can definitely initiate a systemic change in governance and regulation.
Okay, thank you very much, Denis. That gives me a good feelings, let's say. Thank you very much for your comments. Now that we have finished the questions that we wanted to ask our panelists, we are going to the questions placed by our audience. Basically, we have not edited them. So let's read the first one. What do you envisage to be the game-changing aspect of making the implementation of safety and sustainability by design concept based on a specific criteria, a mandatory task for any production processing? A mandatory task. Okay, based on this question, perhaps I would ask probably Jana to be the first to make a comment on that, as it's clearly a regulatory thing and a regulatory question. Jana, just I would say, or I would ask you, do you see that safety and sustainability by design can become in some way a hard law, not just soft law incentives, but a hard law mechanism, some way next on in parallel to REACH regulation, for instance?
Well, it's a good question and maybe difficult to answer. I think that nanomaterials are already covered by REACH, no, from 2020. Yeah. Andre can tell more if I am not correct, but what is not covered is sustainability aspect. So we need to think about this, but for me it's really hard to answer, and I can't now. I'm sorry.
Because my feeling here is that we are looking at safety and sustainability also as I think that we have to change a little bit the mindset that we have. Instead of thinking so heavily on risk and on avoiding risk, trying to be, let's say, more open and positive, saying let's try to enhance innovation, sustainable and safety innovations, not and stop talking about just only focus on avoiding risk. And this idea is what makes me, you are right, REACH from 2020 has already new obligations for specifically for nano. But it's again a risk regulation. It's the idea of we have to avoid risk. We are not promoting innovations. And that is something that, I don't know, perhaps Henrik, that is very much focused on, or his presentation was very much focused on helping chemical industry to go to the road of safety and sustainability, can give us an input on that. What do you think, Henrik? Is that the possibility? You envisage a possibility of a regulatory mechanism helping the innovations, safety and sustainable innovations?
Ignasi, I'm sorry, just to say the intention of the Commission is definitely not to hinder innovation and on opposite, to support it. so that it is clear. And maybe Andrei can just complement, because he asked for, even he is not among panelists and speakers, but he can say more on REACH because he works in this field from DG Environment.
Great. Oh, it will be nice to hear him.
Yeah, thank you, and really apologies. I only joined 2 minutes before I had other engagements. I was really looking forward to this workshop and I missed it, so I'm really sorry. But to jump in, so without knowing the context of what was discussed before, to argue that maybe just put in context, safe and sustainable by design is chemical strategies, one of the chemical strategies action applying to all chemicals and kind of supporting the transition to this safe and sustainable chemistry and chemicals in future in Europe. But saying that, the important action defined under had been to work on the description of or definition of a framework and safe and sustainable by design criteria that would that could be applied within this framework to assess, you know, whether, for example, a chemical is safe and sustainable by design. This is still in process of being defined how the framework should look like. There will be a very comprehensive, well-attended, I understand, the workshop on this next month. The point I really wanted to make was in this context is that the regulatory, it is not, at least we do not have intentions, regulatory intentions to somehow mandate the concept of as mandating of being it applied to production or processing. We would certainly like to have the tools, this way I see it, we'd like to have the tools available, criteria available, so so the frameworks can be applied, maybe even in different contexts, like you know, steering research in a certain way, supporting innovation, like you said, by some positive actions, like also through taxonomy and so on, that you will be able to encourage, to support specific direction in that respect. But mandating through regulation that is being applied, it's not one of a more one of the explicit tasks that we are currently thinking on. We do have other ideas like sustainable product initiative, yeah, with digital passports and so on, to try to address also maybe other objectives of the strategy, which is to push to avoid most harmful substances in our atmosphere and so on. All those aspects, and to replace them by safe and sustainable chemicals, you know, that are developed through this innovative process, but not by maybe pushing that the concept as itself, but rather by enabling that those chemicals actually then do come through because they are supported by the frames, or prevented to enter if they're unsafe and unsustainable, for which we already have the safety criteria and so on within the regulations. And those, of course, some of them are being strengthened also through further hazard classes and so on. All this very comprehensive number of actions being taken, but not as safe and sustainable by design as a mandatory part of the tool in order to conduct.
Just taking advantage that you are here with us, let me ask you a very direct question, kind of, are you in any way thinking of helping safety and sustainability by design initiative, but a kind of fast track approval processes, or some kind of not obligations, new obligations to industry, but a kind of voluntary parallel regulatory fast tracks, or kind of a regulatory initiative, more than just incentive? Is that in any way envisaged from the Commission, this possibility?
Concretely, as a fast track, I've seen it discussed, I've heard it discussed also in the past, also as part of the innovation principle support and so on. I can say, to my knowledge, we don't have an explicit consideration in that respect. If there is a regulatory implementation to be fast-tracked, I mean, it should work fast, effective, and efficient. That's our constant mantra, and we're working on the processes to ensure that, and not maybe to design specific sub-processes which might have even faster track than maybe the general line. So so if you allow me to slightly avoid because we don't have that particular explicit plan in that respect, but to still steer it in a direction. Yes, we would like our regulatory processes to are actually faster and effective, and we are working on that even under rich revision. Those are exactly the objectives which are being addressed. But maybe to start differentiating between the different tracks might not necessarily be the optimal way of achieving what we at the end want, which is the safer and sustainable, safer environment in which we live in, and safer and sustainable products which we are using. So that would be my answer to you as well. In addition, that we believe, of course, in that the safe and sustainable by design, with all its criteria and data information requirements, which help determine whether something says so. That is not done in isolation to the regulation or regulatory requirements. These are very much interlinked, and the data underpinning both should, to the maximum extent, be the same, or at least closely associated, even if the safe and sustainable design may not go into the depth of maybe final regulatory requirement for something which is expected and is allowed to be on the market in thousands of tons. So there are maybe differences in data expectations as well between the different stages of access to the market. However, still there should be some kind of an underlying understanding of what data is relevant in order to determine whether something's safe, and also the sustainability dimensions are being covered. What I want to say with that is that if you are designing already safe and sustainable products, and you're applying some of these methodologies and using some of these criteria, likely the information that you already have and the information you have received from the outcomes of such assessment might actually help you in a much faster compliance with faster, at least easier compliance with the regulatory requirements. They should not be seen as one and the other, one against the other, but rather as all part of the same underlying objective.
In that sense, let's say if you are based on safety and sustainability by design processes, for sure your REACH dossier will be already done, let's say. No, it's in that way.
Yeah, could I just make a remark?
Yes, of course, please.
Yes, I just wanted to remind all of us that when we started with Safe by Design many years ago with NanoReg, and there are some people here also, Eva is involved and others, our idea was not to launch safe products. We already know that the products on the market are safe. So the idea was to develop a methodology, a framework, or how you want to call it, so we can reach there in a cost-effective way. So we can predict any problems, etc., earlier on, because as Andrea said, we have regulations in place, and whatever gets on the market is safe. And I really feel that we should not go down that line, because it creates a lot of confusion among consumers, because they may feel that, oh my God, things are not safe, and this is why we want to implement this strategy. And the idea was that we facilitate. Maybe you have other ideas as well, but that was one of the ideas. We facilitate companies so they can get their products faster, and they can be assured, like we just mentioned now with Andrea, that the products will be compliant with regulation, but they can anticipate this early. And that was the challenge, to decide what to do at the different stages of innovation. And these were the early idea of the European projects. Maybe we are moving a little bit further from there. We have sustainability, but I wouldn't like to see that we are saying that maybe now products are not safe, so we need to implement this so they are safe. I don't know if this is a good idea for the wider audience outside the group. I just wanted to make this remark, and it's quite personal, actually. Thank you.
Oh, John, thank you very much. I just let me ask you, or let me, because we are in a round table and we are in a small group of people, let's say, so we can say things. My feeling is, you said, okay, the regulation is there, it's in place. Yes, it's in place. But for instance, for a lot of small companies like us, we will never reach 1 ton of nanoparticles per year. So we will not even be under the REACH regulation. We are excluded from there. So all products that are using our nanoparticles and that are in the market, they are complying with regulation because we are excluded from REACH. But why you are so sure that our products are safe? Let's say that our production and a small company, what we do is following from the last 20 years, our people is following the principles of safety and sustainability when we produce our nanoparticles. Let's say, basic example, we have never used and will never use powder nanoparticles. But this is an internal production method. And regulation here it's above us, and it's not. So there I have a conflict there saying, yes, the regulation exists, but there is a huge gap for us there. So how you see that comment, let's say?
Oh, so, okay, I can go back on stage. I don't know if anybody else wants to take the floor. From my perspective, according to regulation, you have to assure that the consumers that the product you are launching is safe. So maybe, yeah, in this case, we do need those guidelines that we have been talking about before. And then, you know, there are consultancy companies who can assure you. I mean, there are criteria we have to comply, which is clear. We have the clear endpoints we have to address, like genotoxicity, for example, is a must. There are some very clear guidelines out there. So I suppose your point is more on the voluntary basis that you want to address those criteria. Is it your point? Because nobody makes you. I mean, you don't have to really you don't have to follow compulsorily because we are below 1 ton. This is what you mean, right?
Yeah, because let's say that it's why when, for instance, all the movement of responsible research and innovation start, that was very interesting for us because it was the idea of saying, okay, the regulation at this moment has a big gap for under 1 ton production per year, let's say, in chemical regulation in Europe. So then we had to go to voluntary measures for trying to reach the market in a safest way. So that is my point, yeah.
Can I just make very quick remark, just perception-wise? I mean, you talk about voluntary measures. Yes, what for example, REACH does not oblige you is to have a registration obligation if you are an economic operator producing below 1 ton. But that may not be the only obligation you might have in order for you to market your substance. You would as well be expected to follow to market it safely. So on the basis of existing information that you might have, you would need to classify. You would need to have your to have safety data sheets. If to whomever you would be selling to, in order if they would be making a product out of it, there is a regulation that obliges to some degree demonstration of safe use of that product, and that's what also Blanca has been talking about. And these again, it might differ on the different product categories and so on, but a lot of them, for example, would go back and would try to assess safety also through the safety of the ingredient being put in, like in cosmetics and so on, and whether the formulation as such is safe. And on the basis of that, again, some appreciation of safety of what is being put in, including your contribution of your material, needs to be assessed. So talking about voluntary sounds a bit too easy. We all, everyone has certain obligations if materials, products, and so on are being put on the market. But I agree with you that maybe there are no clear data generation and compilation obligations like they are under REACH for about 1 ton or about 10 tons or 100 tons over 1,000 tons. So those kind of obligations you might not have, but you're still somehow responsible, as you're responsible to your workers for the safe environment in order to manufacture.
That's for sure. We have the horizontal regulations, among others, the worker safety product regulations. That's for sure. It's the only my only concern, let's say, from a small company perspective, is that to really comply with regulations, we realized that we had to be safe from the lab, and it was not so much because the regulation are forcing us, but because it's the safest way in this a little bit messy regulation for nanoparticles, let's say. That is my point here. I would also like to listen Henrik's perspective here, if he may.
Yes, I think a lot of interesting things was said in between here, and from our view, we also don't really see that this necessarily needs to be a regulatory thing, but it's more of a labeling or a certification scheme that can be applied to products or substances of different kinds. And but of course, this very much implies. I mean, the motor, the driver behind all this is, of course, that there is transparency on the market, and that there is a also for products that are sustainable design. So it's I mean, the game-changing aspect is, of course, that it is widely recognized and that the system comes with some authority, so to speak. So that would be my answer to this.
Okay, thank you very much, Henrik. I also would like to know the perspective of Chloe as representative of the chemical industry, especially in this with this this feeling that I have that we need to focus on practical tools for small companies, especially because he mentioned that, and I would like very much to know his how you see that this is being able to, or we can move to that direction to help small companies in that process. I'm not sure.
And Chloe, we cannot hear you. It seems that your microphone is open, but we cannot hear you. No, it does not work.
Can I come in on this question? This is Denis.
Oh, yes, of course, Denis.
I was thinking that actually, since you're putting it as a question of making it mandatory or for industry to use SSbD, I think one good, not necessarily mandatory in the sense of sort of legally binding, but mandatory in the sense of let's say survival and financial existence of the company, especially if we're talking about SMEs. I think the question that Xenia in her film presentation mentioned the sustainable finance concept is a very important one, because to the extent that we can actually make it easier for SMEs to get the financial resources to develop, if they are to follow SSbD concepts in specific, following the specified criteria in their production lines, then that could really be a game changer as well. For this to happen, of course, you need to have the corresponding tools that need to be, as Sean mentioned, simple and transparent and sort of verifiable by authorities as well, that it is a question of that they are following indeed SSbD criteria. But if maybe by connecting the financial world with the implementation of SSbD in the industrial production world, it could be an elegant way, let's put it like that, to go around, to circumvent the question of regulatory mandate, so to speak. If people don't want to feel that this is upsetting equilibria too much, and we have good experience. We have good experience from that based on the climate-related financing from the European Investment Bank, for instance, which is indeed trying to implement that significantly, and I think that could be an interesting option. So that's something that may be CEFIC, but also more specialized on SMEs associations could actually make it a point to try to investigate this. I think this would be very interesting because it also affects the kind of tools that will be necessary to implement SSbD in a again transparent and verifiable way.
Can you hear me?
That sounds very interesting. Thank you. And Chloe?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfectly.
Ah, good. Thank you. Yeah, just talking about the SMEs, this is it. I mean, I think this is maybe the game-changing aspect is when we are able to connect with all the SMEs who need support on this SSbD developments, that they have the right tools to be applied to this SSbD concept. And this is the major challenge. And yeah, we did mention this before. This IRIS project financed by the European Commission hopefully will enable us to form a platform and to really embed SMEs and to help them to give services, to give support, to embed this SSbD methodology, because at the end it will be a framework. It will be through trainings, it will be through guidelines, and this is how we are going to succeed, is that a maximum number of companies can really embrace this concept. Because today we are talking in a small group of experts, but the answer is really to be able to reach out to a maximum number of stakeholders. And even like we're talking about European Union, but ideally even we should go beyond the European Union. But that's another that's another challenge.
Okay, thank you very much. And I would also like, because we are talking now on focus on SMEs, to know what Sean would think about that as a representative of the Industrial Association. Are you there, Sean?
Yes, no, I am indeed here. Right. Should safe and sustainable by design concept be mandatory? What would we be making mandatory? Because at the minute, what we have is a concept. What we need is tools that people can use, practical tools that people can use. Looking at it from a regulatory point of view, REACH sets out certain obligations on companies. But REACH does not tell you how to meet those obligations, what tools you must use to meet those obligations. So that's what we need to develop. There are existing tools that can be used to meet your obligations, and indeed these are constantly being worked upon. So for example, at the minute there's quite a few projects working on the OECD guidelines that allow people to meet regulatory obligations. But before we make anything obligatory, we have to make sure that companies can achieve that goal. Otherwise we're just setting them up for failure. So at the minute, what I'd say is, do we have the right tools to make the SSbD concept a mandatory obligation? No. Therefore, by making it a mandatory obligation, we will actually just create a problem that's unsolvable.
But I think that this is, since Sean was saying this, if I can, this is exactly what PARC is trying to do, it's set out to do, to create a toolbox that actually can support this kind of transition. So that would be, which of course has to be a transition that is addressed both to industry and to authorities as well, because authorities need to be able to capture that and verify.
Absolutely, Dennis, and I agree. And if you take, for example, some of the concepts that have been developed in, for example, the NanoReg 2 project, where they talked about not only the responsibility of industry, but also what regulators must do. So this idea of regulatory preparedness, that regulators must also work closer with the innovators to help innovation be pulled through, then I think that's absolutely right, that we should expect all parts, all stakeholders to be able to participate in this. So, for example, if we take, for example, just the REACH regulations we have at the minute, there's certain obligations on companies who are producing nanomaterials that they have to fulfill, and those obligations require the production of new guidelines and tools so that companies can use that. So there is a big project going on with the OECD on updating OECD test guidelines to make sure that those test guidelines are available for use, that companies are able to fulfill their regulatory obligations. And it's also tantamount for regulators to be able to only introduce regulations or only to insist on certain regulations once those regulations can actually be fulfilled and met. Otherwise, as I said, all you're really doing then is setting up not just industry to fail, but also society itself to not be able to benefit from the production of new products.
And just that, I also wanted to enter you one comment here, that is this close collaboration between regulators and SMEs that we have been thinking a lot in the last years, that there are a lot of projects pointing in that need and that direction. You would see the possibility of, or that a tool like a pilot project or a kind of idea or thing that has been happening, like for instance in the battery sector, that it's a close partnership between regulators and innovators and industry. So you see that this kind of ideas could be a way forward for what we are talking about?
If that question suggests to me, then yes, that's exactly what we need, is closer collaboration between the regulators, between industry, between society. And we need to, I mean, safe and sustainable by design is indeed just a concept. And so we need to firm this concept up now, provide the tools that people can use to be able to assess their materials throughout the entire value chain. And this will then benefit all of us. And I would just like to say as well that one of the challenges we have is in terms of the name safe and sustainable by design, it is indeed this aspect of by design. So it's doing it at the earliest phase possible, and also making sure that people are taking care of this right from the earliest phase. But as Blanca has already sort of commented, that's not to say that what people are producing now is unsafe materials, because there are obligations obviously on industry to ensure that they're producing safe materials, and indeed have been for, you know, and continue to do so.
Okay.
One aspect which has not been approached yet is the imports. We really have also to watch what is coming in, because the European standards are much higher, and part of the game is also to look at the and that's where the digital passport and the enforcement can play a very big role, is that to ensure that products in the market don't contain any harmful substances. That's one thing. The other aspect I wanted to bring out, together with the tools you're mentioning, is the fast developments on intelligence, artificial intelligence. And I think in the next few years, we should be able to have a tool to predict when we are doing innovation, when we are at the early stage of development of a product, that we can have predictive models and be able to test all the sustainability safety aspects in the very early stages of innovation, much better in the next few years than before.
Okay.
That's one of
Thank you very much for that last comment, because that it's not only very interesting for me, but it's especially interesting because SABYDOMA project is in fact going in that direction. So that is absolutely clear, and it's the future, the use of artificial intelligence there. I'm very sorry to tell you that it's now nearly 1 o'clock. We have 2 minutes to close, and I cannot give any more floor to anyone because we have to stop now. It has been really a big pleasure to me to be in this round table, and I would love to continue, but we can't. I give now the floor to Anthony, and thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you very much, Ignasi. Thank you very much to all the speakers, also to the audience. There were quite a lot of questions in the chat, and indeed, that's always, I would say, the frustration of such events, is that it raises more questions while the speakers are sharing their own opinion on a topic. But of course, that is an open invitation. Feel free to reach out to the members of our project, but also to the speakers if you want to further engage a discussion about certain topics. We have seen this morning again, and the Mentimeter survey was a very good demonstration of that, that we have no clear agreement about, first of all, a definition of safe sustainable by design, but also of how the approach should be taken. Should it move to one day a regulation or not? The roundtable highlighted that there is a diversity of opinions about it. There are two ways to conclude on that basis. The first one would be very pessimistic, that there is no agreement and that therefore we should not do anything because there is a lack of common approach or understanding. But there is a second conclusion which is possible and which further strengthens why we have projects like SABYDOMA working on a concept like safe by design and even safe and sustainable by design. That is to say that we should first of all have more workshops, which are planned in the future, at least in the context of a project. But secondly, that the lack of agreement today does not mean that there are ways to work on, first of all, I would say, a common definition. Common definition doesn't mean that more particular definition is not possible, but at least everyone could agree on a common playing field. Secondly, we have also seen that there are, of course, a lot of concerns about a possible implementation in a regulatory tool of the safe and sustainable by design approach. That is, of course, something that will never be addressed in a context like the workshop. Regulators will have to handle this with the institutions in charge of this, Council, European Parliament, in the case of European legislation. But what we have seen today is that there are a lot of questions going on, and also a lot of people working at their own level to improve the understanding of safe and sustainable by design. We see that the question about tools comes back very often. And that is probably what all speakers agreed on, is that tools are necessary. Even if the principle would not be implemented in regulation, tools to work with the concept are absolutely necessary. And that shows that the different projects currently funded about Safe by Design are complementary. And what we will have in our project is, of course, upcoming workshops until next year that will further explore the possible approaches to safe and sustainable by design. We have had quite a number of speakers today. Speakers were from different backgrounds. I hope for the audience that you all enjoyed this workshop. Recording and of course summary will be available in the next weeks. Please feel free to go back to our website of the project to also be in the loop for our future events. And again, please feel free to reach out with the different speakers and, of course, organizers of this workshop. And, of course, a big thank you again to all the speakers and to Beatriz Alfaro in particular and Ignasi, who were the driving forces among others in our project. Thank you very much and enjoy the afternoon.